Thanks for purchasing this financial forecaster in Google Sheets. My name's Andy and I'm the creator of SheetReady. Right, so the purpose of this spreadsheet is to have a look ahead year by year on what your finances could look like in the future. And it relies on inserting various parameters and a combination of assets and liabilities and just trying to work out how they grow or hopefully how your liabilities decrease over time. The other thing it does is it has a look at what your money is doing year by year. In other words, how much you're putting in to whether it's investments or paying off your debts, and then it works out a net cash flow that's available to you based on that. So you can use this as a very rough guide for retirement income, for example. So let's have a look at it. Okay, the first thing you need to do is to set your parameters. Click on the Forecaster tab and you want to put in your current age. So just say you're still fairly young, you're 25. You want to have a look ahead quite a long time. Let's say you want to have a look ahead even up to 60 years. You want to live to a ripe old age. The average age in the average life expectancy in the West is something like 85 years. I think it's about 84 on average between male and female. So you'd be doing pretty well to make it to 85. Your start year, this is the current calendar year. So let's put in 2024. And the current age should really be what you turn in the calendar year. Okay, inflation. I'm just going with what it's been over the last 30 years in Australia on average. This is probably fairly typical of a Western country. You might want to have a look at your own country to work out what that would be, but I'd say anything around 3%. What this does is it gives us some present value numbers looking forward. So just say when we forecast and we're the ripe old age of 60, we look at it and we think, wow, that's amazing. I've got so much money coming in. The thing is, how much is that worth really in today's dollars? And you'd be surprised. Often you need quite a bit more than what you think. All right, so we set up our parameters. The next thing to do is to set up our assets. Let's just say here that we have a retirement fund. So this is called various things in different countries. Now the growth rate, I'm going to be fairly conservative actually and put in 8%. I say conservative because if you invest in Australian stocks in the index, historically you're returning on average something like 10% a year. So 8% should take care of any insurance within that retirement plan, performance fees, etc. 8% I think is very conservative. Start year. Now what this does is if you wanted to start in your year one, then you would put in here year one. If you wanted to say, well, I'm not going to really concentrate on whatever this asset is until later on, then you might say year 5 or year 10. But anyway, I think we're all probably wanting to put it something ahead to our retirement, even at the age of 25. The initial value. Let's say we've already built up 50,000. We've done really well. Now what we're seeing straight away is the 50,000, the initial value gets captured in year one, and our growth rate of 8% is applied. That's why our total value down here is $54,000. Now what we have here is the ability to either buy or sell each asset every year, and in every case there are 2 columns for this, and this can come in handy later on. So let's just say every year we're putting aside, say, 10% of our income, and we earn, at this stage, maybe $60,000 a year. So we say $6,000 is going to go into that. And going forward, I want to say that it's 6,000 or the previous years, and it's going to increase at a rate that's pretty much the same as inflation. I'm just going to go 1.03. Now what I can do here is I can pull this down, and I can pull this down to say, I'm not sure when I want to retire. Let's just say that I want to retire around age 60, or yeah, let's just pull that back and say that 60th year of my life is when I retire. Now what you can see here is that the combination of our regular increase in what we're putting into our retirement each year plus capital growth based on our growth rate means that by the age of 59 we have almost 2.5 million in that fund. You can see the power there of compound interest. Now, retirement for a lot of people is locked up. You can't access it in Australia until you're 60. In the US, I think it's 59.5. So let's just say that you're building up your own portfolio of stocks outside of your retirement. Now, I'm going to be a little bit less conservative. Let's just go with the full-blown index. You're just investing in an index fund with virtually no management fees. You want to start that straight away. Your initial value, let's say, is nothing. And in here, we're going to put aside, say, 5% of your income. So maybe that's $3,000 every year. And I'm going to apply this same, I'll just copy and paste this same growth rate of 3% a year. And let's pull this down. Great. Now you've got, by the time you retire, over $1 million. And honestly, all you've been doing here is putting aside 5% of your income, being really regular. You can see in the first couple of years, it's super boring. In fact, in the first 5 years, you might think, is this really worth it at all? All I've got is 21 grand. But hey, I mean, every 5 years after that, this thing starts to really accelerate, particularly by the end. What else can you do? Well, maybe you've got some cash as well. The growth rate might be far less. On average, maybe it's 4%, 5%. You're starting this time in, say, year 10. You're only wanting to put aside cash when you're 35. I don't know why, but let's just go with that. Now, your initial value, maybe you just want to give it a real hit in the first year. You've got 20,000. Let's just say, let's go with 5,000 a year. And you really want to do this for 10 years. This time you don't want any growth rate. But even then, you've got a little bit of cash there when you come into retirement, and it's just ticking away. Now let's have a look at liabilities. Now for most people, the biggest liability is going to be a home if you purchase a home. But if you study, if you get a degree, you're also going to have a student loan or loans. So let's start with our student loan. Let's say that the starting year is year 1 when you're 25. The interest rate, let's say that it's pretty much on par with inflation. In Australia, they index all of the student loans to inflation. And the initial value, unfortunately for you, it's $100,000. And honestly, that's not unheard of. In fact, it could be even more than that, depending on your degree. But let's just say that you are deciding to be quite diligent and to sort of try and tick away at that. Now you see here, I put in a positive value, but that just makes the whole debt situation even worse. So whenever you're dealing with payments in this side, in the liabilities, you have to put in negative numbers. Okay, now I'm going to say that I'm going to be quite disciplined, and this payment is going to grow at 3% as well. I'll just drag this down. Yeah, now you can't really go negative in the loan, so if this happens to you, what you probably want to do down the bottom here is get rid of these final repayments, and if you want to zero it out, then you can just put in basically the last payment. Oops, I got them around the wrong way. All right, cool. Yeah. So what I did there is the year before last, I got down to only 5,790 9.8 remaining, so that's all that I paid in that final year. And that's gone. Now what that also does is you've freed up about $8,000 from this point going forward. So why don't you then add this $8,000 in here and top up your stock portfolio? Why don't you also take that money and multiply it by that same increased rate of 3% a year. And I can't remember the exact numbers, so let's go back here and let's just see what difference this makes when we retire. Cool, so it's something like another $140,000. Okay, something else you might have is a house. What do I do with a house? Here's our house. Our house grows a capital growth rate of, say, 6%. I got this from where I live, my particular city in Australia, and over 30 years, that's about the average capital gain per year. The start year, let's say I buy a house when I'm 35. Even in 10 years' time, I'm still paying $1.5 million, which in 10 years' time might be considered cheap. In fact, let's go all out. Let's say $2 million. That would not be unheard of at all. And my mortgage is really big, 1.6 million. So I've managed to save up quite a bit. And the interest rate, all I can do really is just go on current interest rates, which are about 6.3%. Who knows what they'll be in the future? Let's just say 6%. And the start year is 10. Now let's have a look at the repayments first. This tells me that I can't actually afford a house that's that expensive. There's no way I'm going to be able to pay off that much money every year. So really, what I need to do here is be realistic. Maybe in 10 years' time. But anyway, for the purposes of this, we have to assume that we're buying something that we can afford at some stage, and we've got a mortgage which is more manageable. Even then, it's still a big amount. Yeah, look, I'm really sorry for people who are just starting out and who are paying these crazy prices for houses and for mortgages. That's a lot of your income. That's probably over 30% of your income. And just before you retire, you've actually paid that thing off. Now remember, you can zero these out. There we go. The other thing is that is now freeing up a hefty chunk of cash right at the end when we're retiring. We've got 42 and then about 56. Let's just set that aside in cash. 42. So these are the repayments that you would have been paying, and you've just given yourself a nice little top up in cash that will come in very handy in retirement. All right, so what does this all look like? Well, you can visualize this now, and let's have a look at our assets. So this is our total assets over time. You can see here over the 60 years that we've got a lot of money. There's no other way to say that, because at the moment what we're saying is that all these assets are still growing. Now let's not get too excited, because something else that probably will help is what I might call cash flow. Now this is called cash flow in present value. What this means is that up until retirement, we've been putting money in, whether it's paying off our loan, which is this big jump here, or putting money aside faithfully every year to build up our assets. Now I went here with cash flow present value. Even though we were increasing our payments into these assets and into these loans, you can see here our cash flow is pretty well even. That's because the rate of increase of what we're putting aside more or less matched the rate of inflation. Okay, so what would that look like if I just went cash flow? Well, let's compare them. Let's just add cash flow. Yeah, you can see here now that it is increasing over time. Let's just blank that off. And what I want to do now is to take a wage from our retirement and from our money that we've put aside. Now remember, this is a fair way off into the future, and you'll probably need more than what you think. So I'm going to take 150,000. I'm going to apply my magic formula, and I'm going to take a steady wage all the way up until 84. Okay. Now I'll come back to this, and that's really quite interesting. I'm also going to take a steady income of 50,000 a year, taking that from our stocks. Cool. Great. Now what you can see here is in present value, I'm actually getting a retirement income of $75,000 every year, pretty much. In fact, it's going up a little bit. Maybe I should have been using the 2.9% instead of 3% for what I was taking out every year. The other thing you can do is you can say, well, there's going to be a few years where I'd like to go on a really nice holiday. So that's year one. And when I say nice, I mean really nice. I'm going to take 100 grand, which remember in the future isn't worth as much as it is today, but that is a pretty amazing holiday. I'm also going to take 5 years after that, another really great holiday, this time 150 grand. Now I'm just pulling it out of the stocks, but maybe I could have pulled it out of my retirement as well. Let's have a look at our second chart. And what I want to do here is to go down to retirement, and I'll pop that in. Now this is really interesting. What it's telling us is that all the way up until we retire, we're putting money in and it's accumulating. After we retire, we're taking money out, hence this really big drop off. However, it looks like we're actually going to run out at some point. So perhaps we've been taking a little bit too much money out. That's okay. What we can do is come back to where we started taking it out, and we can reduce this to say 120. Now, we're 20 grand short of what we wanted to do in retirement. So let's say we pull out 20 from our stocks. You can see here what happens is in retirement, our money keeps growing and our stocks also keep growing. These are the hits where we've taken some really nice holidays. And this is where the growth rate can make a big difference. So that's why if you're paying, say, 1% of management fees for your retirement fund, the difference between 8 and 9% can make such a difference to your retirement. That's why it's important to try and find something that's just low management fees and that tracks the index. Because really, in my circumstance, that's what I've done. And I think a growth rate of 9% is actually, over time, pretty representative of what the return should be. That's factoring in the very small management fees and also the insurance on my particular product. Anyway, I'll let you work out what your situation is. It also could mean the difference between just that 1%, what you retire on. So right here, we're looking at a pretty steady income of close to $70,000 a year. Let's just go back here and put in something like 160. You can see here that over time, these assets are still growing. But what you've done is you've just given yourself a pay rise of about $12,000 to $15,000 a year. Now that could make a real difference in retirement. And remember, this is all in present value. Also, you've got something here left over for the kids if you want to have something passed on to them. And, mate, if you live till you're 95, you're still okay. You might live till you're 100, and you know that you can keep your income going in present value. Something else that you might consider is, in the future, you could potentially sell your house. If you do that, then the cost of living goes up and you'll be paying rent. Or the other thing that you might do is at some point just say that you're now 70, maybe you downsize. You just go to like a 2-bedroom apartment or something. Now this seems really ridiculous, but at that point in time, maybe that frees up $3 million. Because remember, present value, house, the cost of property, and all the rest of it. So what I've done there is I've taken $3 million off that, but I have to put the $3 million back somewhere. So in my case, I'm just going to put it into stocks. Now let's have a look at what's going on here. Wow, all of a sudden, my income stream at age 70, my potential income stream has just gone off the chart. So what that means is I could fund another really awesome holiday, because my quality of life could be still pretty good when I'm 70. Or I could just increase what I'm taking out every year. Let's give myself a pay rise. 50,000, it's worth a fair bit. I think you get the whole inflation thing now, but I'm just going to pull that down. All right, so now I give myself a pay rise. I'm living super large in my 70s, having my best life now. And that was, I suppose, just the power of tapping into the value of your home, being reasonable about the growth rate, but saying, you know, I'm kicking around in this 3/4 bedroom house in the outer suburbs. I'm going to trade up, maybe move to somewhere a bit nicer. I'm going to be happy living in a ground floor unit. Maybe you've even moved into one of those like retirement complexes, which these days, some of them are pretty nice. Anyway, you can see here what that all looks like. And wow, maybe you're looking at this saying that's way too much money for the kids. Okay, let's have a look at our overall assets. Let's now have a look at our assets in present value. Actually, let's make this blank. Let's make this blank. It's a bit hard to see sometimes. I'm just going to go back here, assets present value. And this is the power of having all these options. So if your kids are saying, what on earth are you guys doing? Why are you using up all this money? You say, hey guys, if we fall off the perch when we're 85, you get 6 million in present value. Or if you want to really impress them, just say we'll be worth well over 30 million and we're having a very reasonable, very comfortable life. Thank you very much. Now, this just shows, I think, the power of compound growth. And your situation is going to be unique, but I would just encourage you to use a tool like this, especially when you're young, to have a look into the future. And when I was younger, I wish I had have done a bit more of this. I'm not saying that I lived a crazy, luxurious lifestyle, but I think in my real early days, if I had have known the power of just index funds and stocks and stuff like that, I probably would have been a bit more aggressive in putting money aside. Great, guys. I hope you really enjoy this tool, and I look forward to any feedback that you might have as well. Thank you. Bye.